Hello everyone and welcome. This is part 3 of the video, and here we'll try to do the south and west face of the A building. Again, we're practicing how to figure out the details related to spatial separations, that is the minimum percentage of unprotected area for each face of a building. Right here in the top right corner is where I'm going to link right now the link to parts 1 and 2 of the video. Well, let's do part 1. Okay. And where you'll find the north and east face of this same building. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So what we were working on and what we've already managed to figure out was the details related to the north face and the east face. Right now, we're going to do the south face of the A building. And a reminder again that this is an arena type building. And what we figured out previously is that arenas are A3 occupancies, right? Assembly type occupancies, A3. Go back to part 1 to figure out how we came up with this. Okay. So we're going to do the south face right now. Let's do it. South. So we're going to figure out what the vertical dimension is, what the horizontal dimension is of the south face, what the limiting distance is of the south face, and just a reminder that the occupancy that we figured out already was A3. Okay. All right. So the vertical dimension of the south face, don't forget, is from average grade. That's the average ground level of the south face, all the way to the highest ceiling elevation south face. Okay. Luckily, the way these drawings are set up, that's exactly the dimension that we have, which in our specific case is 4.6. Okay, that's what we're going to know here, 4.6 meters. Okay, now for L, right here, L is the horizontal dimension of the south face of the A building. So let's go look at that. What is it? Well, it's going to be this dimension here. That's the horizontal dimension of the south face, which in our case is 17 meters. Note of it right here. And now let's go find what the limiting distance is for that south face. Now the limiting distance goes to, look at this. It is, this south face is facing another building. So normally, according to the definition of the limiting distance that we find in the Ontario Building Code, under all definitions, it would be halfway between the two buildings, except that the south face actually is facing a property line. Okay? So the limiting distance goes actually to the property line. So it's not related to this, but instead is right here. So what is that distance? Yeah, you got it. 7.8 meters, which is exactly what we're going to show. The limiting distance is 7.8 meters. Okay, so we're going to use these geometric properties we just figured out to come up with the areas and the ratios. I'm going to show them right here. Area. The vertical dimension times the horizontal dimension, 4.6, 17. And best 2 out of 3, that gives me 78.2 meters squared. And as we know by now, when we put it in the appropriate table, we can't just use that number. We have to use the closest higher number. And what we also learned is that the table we're going to be using is 3.2.3.1b. And we use this table because the building under consideration is unsprinklered, right? No sprinklers. Right, like that. And because it's an A3 occupancy. So then from that information, what that tells us is that we are going to be using area 80 meters squared. Let me show you how I came up with that. Okay. I'm just going to put up on the screen the relevant table. Right here. 2.3.1b, okay, because it's an A2 occupancy, because it's not sprinklered. But then for maximum area, I have to go and find the closest one to 78.2. It's not 60 because it's lower. The highest closest one is going to be that row. Next, we have to find out what the ratio is that we have to use from here. So we have to do L over H, or H over L, L over H, or H over L. We have to pick the larger one of the two. Since L is larger than H, we already know that L over H is going to be the larger of the two ratios. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find this ratio here, L over H. It's going to be 17.0 meters divided by 4.6 meters. And best 2 out of 3. What do I get from this? 3.69. 69 with no units, which then leads us to use from the table. We have to select the row that is 3 to 1, 2, 10 to 1. Right? Because this is like writing 3.69 to 1. Right? Any fraction divided by 1 is that same number. Okay. So now we have the area, we have the ratio, we have to figure out the right column in that table. And that's where the limiting distance comes into play. If you remember, for the limiting distance, this is the only one where we have to make sure that we round down. Okay. Let's go find in the table if we have 7.8, and if not, what the nearest smaller number is. So let's bring this up. So we have 7.8, so it's 8 maybe? No, it's not 8. It's gonna be 7, right? As we have to round down. The nearest number smaller than 7.8 is 7. So that is what we're going to be using. A limiting distance of 7. I'm going to go down and match the area of 80 and the 3.1 to 10.1. And 7, right down this way, brings us to 52. Okay? Let me write that out in our solution. So again, for the limiting distance, in the table we use 7 meters. Okay. Then, in the table itself, I'm going to write, select percent area equal to 52%. Are we done? No, because in this specific question, we're also being asked to figure out the construction requirements. So that's where table 3.2.3.7 comes from. Let me just make a note of that. from 3 to 0.37. We're going to figure out the fire resistance rating, the type of construction for structure, and the type of cladding for the south face. Let me bring up table 3.2.3.7. And in our case, here is the table. And we know that our building is an A2 occupancy, so we're going to be using this major row. We found that the percentage of unprotected openings is 52%. So we're here. So that means that the fire resistance rating is 45. Type of construction is combustible or non-combustible. And the type of cladding is combustible or non-combustible. So let's write that out. The fire resistance rating is 45 minutes. The type of construction required is combustible or non-combustible. And the type of cladding requirement is the same, combustible or non-combustible. And because this is our final answer, we want to make this super obvious and unmistakable. That's what I'll do so that even I can't miss that this is the final answer. That, and I'm going to point at this. It's obvious. Okay, so that's the answer for the south face. The final face we're going to be working on is going to be the west face, so let's do that right here. West. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay, we're going to figure out the H, L, distance, with a reminder that again, this is an A3 occupancy, right? So yeah, A3 occupancy. Well, let's go look at the west face, HL and limiting distance. Well, the H is unchanged. It's from average grade to the highest ceiling, and as shown on this specific drawing, it's 4.6. The horizontal distance, L, is this distance right here, which on this drawing is shown as 18.6. Okay, cool. And then the limiting distance for the west face, well, it's not 6, even though that's the distance to the property line. Instead, because the west face is facing a street, if you read the definition of limiting distance, when a face of a building is facing the street, it's to the middle of that street. Okay? So this instead is what the distance is going to be. It's going to be from the building face all the way to the middle of that street. It's going to be 6 plus 8 plus half of 12. Okay? Well, let me write those things down. Limiting distance first. Again, it's going to be oh shoot, I forgot. Okay, it's going to be 6 plus 8 plus half of 2. 6 meters. 8 plus half of 12. That's going to be 12 plus 8 equals to 20. The vertical dimension is 4.6 meters, And the horizontal dimension is 18.6. Okay. So we're going to use this quantity here, get the area, is H over L, H times L, pardon me, so 4.6 meters times 18.6 meters, which gives us 85.56. Which then tells us that in the table, we're going to be selecting 100 square meters the table. And that's because we're still using the same table we previously selected for all the other faces, which was table 3.2.3.1b, because for this specific building is an A3 occupancies, and it's unsprinkling. Okay? In terms of H over L or L over H, we're going to be taking which one are the two are we going to take? We have to take the larger one of the two. Well, since the L is larger than the H, we're going to take L over H. This is going to be 18.6 meters divided by 4.6 meters, which is equal to 4.04. I think best 2 out of 3, which then in the table leads us to select 3 to 1 to 10 to 1, right? Okay. This again is in the table. Let me just show you in the table just to make sure that we're on the same page, literally and figuratively. That. Here. Let's clean this up. So again, because our area, the area that we found was 85.56, we don't use 80 as an area, but instead we use 100. Because the ratio we get is 4.04 to 1, and we're going to be using this ratio here, 3 to 1 to 10 to 1. Question is, what column do we use for limiting distance? Right here. Well, the limiting distance we found was 20. And we're lucky enough that there is an actual column that is 20. So we're going to go, whoa, here. We're going down this column right here. Okay. If we go down this column, what happens? There is nothing here. What's happening here? Well, that just means that we've gone above 100. Okay, let me clean that up maybe a bit better. Closest number that we get here, see it, is 100. Right next door. So that means that here, it's still 100. That means 100% of that face is allowed to be unprotected. What does actually that mean? It means that the nearest perceived danger, which is the middle of the street for this face, the west face, is far enough away that the whole west face is allowed to be unprotected. So let's bring this back so that I can show you. So for the limiting distance, I'm going to write the limiting distance down here. That. You have to make the sound when you draw that, right? For the limiting distance, you want to select 20 in the table because we have that. So that in the table itself, we would then select an unprotected area of 100%. That means all of the west face is allowed to be unprotected. It could all be glass. Heck, it could have nothing to cover the west face. For fire purposes, okay? Obviously, you'd have something there to keep the weather out. Okay? Okay, so now that we have this, then what do we do? Are we finished? No, not quite. We have to go to table 3.2.3, what is it? 3.2.3.7 to figure out what the construction requirements are going to be, right? The fire resistance rating and the construction requirements. So let's do that. Let's write this out from table 3.2.3.7. We have to figure out the fire resistance rating. We have to figure out the type of construction. And the type of cladding that's expected. Okay. So let me bring up this table on your screen so you can see it, and let's pick it together. So we figured out that this building is an A-type occupancy, so that's the row we have to use, not this one. And we figured out that we get 100%. So here. But look at this. Isn't this interesting? It's telling us this is up to 100%, but not including. So when you get up to 100%, what that basically means is that you need no fire resistance rating, and you don't care about the type of construction requirements, and you don't care about the type of cladding requirements, because the whole thing can be unprotected. Now, that's usually not recommended, but it'd be the right answer in this case, okay? Because I would usually still go for this. I would accept these as the answers, although technically the answers are nothing, okay? Because this doesn't say up to and including 100, it just says up to 100, but not including. Let's write it according to the building code. Oh. So for fire resistance rating, let me make it a different color so it's obvious. Fire resistance rating, 0. Type of construction required? None. Type of cladding required? None. Okay, that's in this very specific case for the purposes of fire transferring from inside the building to something else. Okay? The building code says you don't need anything because the center line of the street is far enough away. Okay, so here's our final answer. Weird answer, huh? That's the interesting thing. Okay, I'm going to make it super obvious and unmistakable. Even I cannot miss it. You have to make the sounds, right, when you're writing this out. There we go. Okay, so let me come back to the main screen. Here we are. I want to thank you so much for your patience and your time. I hope this wasn't too long. I'm going to put chapter markers in the description at the bottom so you can skip to the right face of the building. I appreciate again your patience. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, stay well, and have a lovely day.